Welcome to the Warriors Haven podcast, the place where discipline meets purpose and everyday people become unstoppable. I'm your host, Jaisha Sutherland, a retired Army drill sergeant, single mom, and the founder of the Warriors Haven. Around here, we talk fitness, mindset, and the mission of building a stronger you, mentally, physically, and financially. Because this isn't just about the gym. It's about life, leadership, and living on your terms. So gear up, lock in, and let's step into the haven where warriors are made. Oh, hey friends, welcome back to the Warriors Haven. Y'all know I really like asking questions. So let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at your life and thought, how did I get here? Maybe you aren't homeless. Maybe you've never struggled with addiction. Maybe you've never lost everything. But maybe you've had a season where you didn't recognize yourself, a season where your finances were falling apart, your relationships were falling apart, your confidence was gone. And you started wondering, is this who I am now? Because here's what I've learned. Sometimes the hardest battle isn't getting out of the situation. It's convincing yourself that you're still worth fighting for while you're in it. And today's conversation is about exactly that. Today, I'm sitting down with Mr. Bryan to talk about homelessness, addiction, losing your way, rebuilding your mindset, and ultimately finding a reason to keep going. And I want you to listen differently today. Don't just listen to his story. Find yourself somewhere inside of it because you may not be where he was, but I guarantee there's a part of his story that will make you think about your own. Friends, welcome back to the Warriors Haven podcast. This is a space where we talk about rebuilding discipline, confidence, energy, and purpose. And sometimes rebuilding yourself means being honest about the seasons of your life that you're not proud of. Today is one of those conversations. Mr. Bryan has experienced homelessness and addiction, but I don't want today's conversation to simply be about what happened to him. I want to talk about what happened inside of him because two people can experience incredible difficult circumstances and respond completely different. So, what changes? Is it mindset? Is it support? Is it environment? Is it one decision? Is it finally getting tired of living the same way? And perhaps the biggest question, how does someone begin believing in themselves again after they've spent years believing they've already lost? Mr. Bryan, welcome to the Warriors Haven podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. That was an amazing introduction and just opening. I loved every bit of that.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you on here. I think for the listeners listening all over the world, this is going to be different than the norm, and I'm really excited because I think it's going to be really special. So, before we talk about the comeback, I want to understand the beginning. When you look back at the period of your life that eventually led to homelessness and addiction, what was happening beneath the surface that people probably couldn't see?
The fight or flight mode. When I moved to California from Texas, I'd been spun out most of my entire life, but I've always enjoyed life. Even though I was struggling so hard on the inside, I was able to really fake being joyful, I guess, and still showing that I enjoyed life because I did. I was just super dark on the inside, and everything was a fight or flight mode. I was such a professional at it that, for the most part, I was able to hide it. I mean, don't get me wrong, everybody knew Bryan was, that guy. There's no doubt about it. I was definitely that guy. Um, and the people closest to me knew that I was struggling, but nobody knew but me how dark it had gotten for me on the inside. And that fight or flight mode just um, kept me from kept me from knowing who I was and what I was doing.
Mm.
Yeah,
Was there a moment where you realized I'm losing control of my life?
absolutely. Absolutely. When I was sleeping, I can laugh about it now because I look back at it and I think that, and I don't think, I know that I had to go through all of this, excuse me, for a bigger purpose.
Hmm.
However, when I was calling friends back in Texas, sleeping in my car and sleeping in a tent and asking them for money for gas just so I could keep the heater on in my car and no one would give me money anymore,
Hmm.
and having gang members trying to steal my tent from me at night and not having any kind of protection and them saying, "Hey, this is my fucking tent, get the fuck out of my tent." That was scary. And I knew at that point that I had, even going to prison for me was the lowest of low that I thought.
Hmm.
But this was a prison outside those walls.
Wow.
That became that was scary, and I knew that I definitely lost control at that point, and there was no direction. I had nowhere to go.
Oh, wow. What were you telling yourself during that season?
I grew up in a really Christian faith-based home in
Mm.
Texas. I don't like religion, but I'm very spiritual and always have been, and I've always understood in a power greater than myself, whether you want to call that God, love, source, creator, guider, Jesus. I don't doesn't make a difference to me.
Mhm.
But I always felt something internally as an external source. And I would literally be sitting in my tent with tears rolling down my face, just crying, um, saying, I can't do this anymore. I've got to go back to Texas. I literally can't take another day. I was so worn out. Um, and I kept hearing a voice saying, "Don't go just yet."
Mm.
And so I stayed and stuck it out. But it, yeah, I just, man, yeah, it was dark and it was bad. It was hard, and I knew that I didn't feel like I had anywhere to turn at that point. And that became really.
Did you believe that you could get out of it?
I did. I knew that I've always been really resourceful, right? I never had to like steal or rob or do any of that kind of stuff for my addiction. I was always super resourceful and was able to scrape money around somewhere, pawn something, hustle in some kind of way, selling things. But I always knew in my internal being that if I could just get clean, if I could just stop this lifestyle, I could do something. I didn't know what. I didn't have an idea of what I even wanted to do at that point. All I cared about was making it to California. And when
Mhm.
I did, that was like a dream come true. And I lived the sex, drugs, and rock and roll to its fullest. And um, it was. But I've always had this internal feeling that I could do something so much more.
Mm.
I just couldn't stop.
Wow. What did you think about yourself at your lowest point?
I was disgusted.
Mm. Oh, that's powerful.
I knew internally that that I had de just become depleted
Hmm.
of all life. And when you're in that fight or flight mode at all times, it's so hard to have a, a good feeling about who you are and what you're becoming and what you're doing with your life. Like it's so hard. I was so down on myself
Hmm.
and wondering, is there any way to even pull myself out of it? And to be honest with you, at that time, as dark as it was and as bad and as tired as I was, I didn't want to stop. I didn't think that was the answer.
Wow.
If that makes sense. Like I just didn't think that, oh, well, getting clean could be the answer to making everything change. I kind of, in a sense, knew that if I could get away from that lifestyle and
Uh-huh.
okay, let me back up. That lifestyle of being homeless and in a tent and bouncing around and doing all I was doing, there was a part of me that didn't believe that it was just the drugs and alcohol that was causing that. Right? It was almost like I know how to survive that way. So it can't be that altogether. I can still control this and still get somewhere. And that was the twisted part of the thinking.
Oh, that's so interesting. So I think that important what everything you just said, because we often look at someone's situation and only see the outside. We see homelessness, we see addiction, we see the consequences, but we don't always see the pain, the beliefs, the trauma, the shame, or decisions happening underneath the surface. And that's where I want to go to next. There comes a point where what you're experiencing can start believing who you believe you are. So I'm curious, did you ever start identifying yourself as the person who was homeless, the person who was addicted, the person who had failed, or did some part of you believe there was another version of you underneath all of that?
Both of them,
Mm,
without question. Without question, both of them. I definitely labeled myself as this homeless addict. Um, the alcohol was always the underlying part of it because when I drink, I want to do other things. So
yeah.
it was always the underlying part of it. But everybody has always known Brian as that guy, right? And so when you have that outlook from other people being embedded into what you already feel that you are, it just intensifies the whole thing. So like I didn't want to tell my mom that I was homeless, but she already knew that I was definitely still, in my addiction and the alcohol. So I always kind of felt like that's just me, that's all I've ever known.
Mm,
I've never been sober in a sense that because I wanted to do it. I never got clean because I wanted to. They were all for so many other reasons, like making sure my mom could sleep better at night or,
mhm.
the jails and the prison. It wasn't ever because I wanted to. I was forced to. It
Gotcha.
wasn't until the day that I got sober and that reflection in the mirror that I saw myself and knew for sure that there was something greater there if I could just, at this point, I knew it had to get clean. Like it was definitely what was destroying my life. That when you start, when you start looking back at things and you
Hmm.
start realizing that every path that you've been down, this is always there.
Yeah.
So it's got to be the main problem.
Hmm.
It's just the way it is.
So when you had that moment there, in looking and having that realization, what would you say to yourself when nobody else was around?
Ooh. Before I got sober,
Yeah.
I I didn't necessarily tell myself bad things like you're worthless, but I did have this thought of you're never going to be able to do this. You're never going to change.
Oh, wow.
I didn't beat myself up as like calling myself names or you know looking at trauma or shame or guilt because I honestly I didn't shame myself. I had a lot of fun and I had a lot of hard times and I look at it as it was just who I am and what I had to go through to become or to
Uh-huh.
start becoming. But I think that I did begin to tell myself a lot of times that this is just who I am. This is just it is, what it is, and that's just who you are. It's all I've ever known.
Oh, wow. Um, when did you first realize this isn't who I am?
It started off with me having a favorite car. It's a Lamborghini.
Mm,
And I was coming home from work one day in LA and I was coming back to Huntington Beach and I'd already kind of started having these thoughts of, man, I would see people in the streets and I started noticing the reflection in other people's eyes and other men especially and thinking they don't look like they're not all tweaked out and drunk and they look like they're enjoying themselves. So
yeah.
the first time in my life I started having those kind of thoughts. They would just go in and out real quick, but I noticed them. And then when I walked out of the grocery store that night, I was reeking of alcohol and probably hadn't slept in God knows how long. There's this beautiful blue and yellow Lamborghini sitting in the parking lot, and this older gentleman got out of it, and I started talking to him, and he was telling me about the car and all this, and looked at me and said it was a gift of his sobriety.
Wow.
And that was the first real moment when I was like, oh, so I could have one of these if I'm sober. Because to me, it's not the thoughts of like, oh, I got to get this other job, I got to make all this money. To me, it was like, if I get sober, I can have one of these. It was that simple.
Yeah.
There was no other like, what are you going to do? How are you going to make this money? I didn't care about any of that. It was just like, that is something I could really have if I changed my life.
Wow, that is so powerful.
Right? It wasn't about anything else. I again, it wasn't about how I could accumulate something that I've always dreamed of having. It was
Yeah.
just like, oh, that really could be a part of me changing my life if I wanted it
That's-
bad enough. So that was like the very first moment that I really got serious and
Wow.
in my thoughts about the whole thing. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's like I said, that's so powerful. Because there's a difference between saying I am broken and saying I'm going through something that is breaking me. Those two statements sound similar, but they create completely different futures. So let's talk about the moment everything started changing. What was the moment or the decision that made you say, I cannot keep living like this?
947 days ago today, I was
Wow.
brushing my teeth, looking in the mirror, and it was the first time that I ever saw myself with pity and disgust and grotesque and lifeless.
Wow.
It was at that very moment when I saw that reflection and it showed that withering away spirit. It wasn't even about the flesh anymore. It was about the spirit was gone.
Wow.
And like I said, I grew up believing in something greater than myself. And at that moment, when I looked in the mirror and saw that and it all hit me, my body and my internal being just got so silent that it was almost scary. And then I heard four words ring out in my brain, and it said, "You are worth it." It wasn't even in my brain; it was like in my entire body.
Wow.
And when I heard those words and looked at myself in the mirror again, um, it was like this moment of clarity that I've never had before. It was a decision that, at that moment, I believed it. I believed that I was worth it,
Yeah.
and I knew that it wasn't me saying that. Like as I'm talking to you, I can hear another voice going, "Okay, say this next," or "This is what's got to be told next," or thinking about what your next question is going to be, or what I got to do later. All these things are going on. It wasn't any of that. It was something from a different place. And
Wow.
when that happened, I kind of had no choice but to believe that I truly was worth something better. Worth what? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, there was no, it's kind of like the reference to the Lamborghini. It wasn't like, how can I get it? It was like, this could be attainable if these things changed.
Right.
And so when that moment happened, that's when I believed in myself for the first time ever. And I didn't stop since then.
Wow. Now let me ask you,
Yeah.
what was the first thing you actually changed?
I don't know that I changed anything but besides staying away. I tried to get myself into what happened was I tried to get sober. I got like 7 days. I relapsed for a month or so, got 9 days and relapsed again, and then showed up at a meeting. Um, that's what, no, so the meetings and all that stuff happened right after I met that man. And then on that day that I looked at myself in the mirror, that's the day that I literally started calling my insurance and getting myself into a sober living house and found a bunch of people that were relapsing there. I was there for 3 days, came home, and I locked myself in my bedroom for 30 days. So I quit it all, like everything. I literally went through the worst withdrawals I've ever been through in my entire life, clawing
Yeah.
the carpet of my floor, begging God to just go ahead and take me because I couldn't do it. And I
Wow.
just I just laid there and just went through it.
Yeah.
And the
Oh,
first
that's
thing I
so.
changed was, I guess the first thing I changed was my decision.
Mm,
I guess in thinking about all of that, the first thing I changed was my decision. I made the decision right then and there to not do it again.
wow. That's strong. I can only imagine, just those what you were just saying and describing, kind of going through it those 30 days. That's not for the faint of heart, and I say that quite a bit with my background and all the things. So there's something I really want listeners to hear, because we have been taught to wait until we feel motivated. But sometimes motivation doesn't come first. Sometimes the decision, like you just said, comes
Right.
first. You make the decision, then you take one small action, and eventually your brain starts collecting evidence that says, maybe I can actually change. So, Bryan, you've lived through something that many people can't imagine. So, if you could sit across from somebody today who is homeless, battling addiction, drowning in shame, or convinced they've ruined their life, what would you tell them?
First of all, if you wait for motivation to do anything in life, it doesn't have to be about getting clean and sober, but if you wait for motivation to make any decision in your life, you're going to be 90 years old and looking back going, why didn't I?
Hmm.
I mean, that's just, you can't wait for motivation to start anything. Like you said, it's taking that one step forward. And if I was sitting in front of somebody that was in that exact same situation, I truly believe with all my heart that you have to believe that you're worth more. And yesterday doesn't define you. The decisions you made yesterday do not define who you are and who you can be. You've just been telling yourself for so many years that you are a certain way, you start believing the lies.
Hmm.
Right? And if you're told something over and over and over by your own self, you're going to believe it and believe that that's all you are and that's all you're worth, but you're not. And you can't go back and change anything from yesterday. Not one religion, not one God that you believe in could ever take you back and let you redo that.
Hmm.
So don't believe the lies that you've been telling yourself that you are that person that you've been telling yourself, because you're not. It doesn't define who you are.
So, Mr. Bryan, would you tell someone that exact same thing if they were sitting alone with themselves at 2 a.m. and believe that they have no future?
Absolutely. But what you have to start doing is you have to really start looking at right now, not tomorrow, because you're not guaranteed that. Stop looking at yesterday. You can look at your past, just don't stare at it, right?
Hmm.
But if you're sitting in that exact same position, you have to really get quiet with yourself and figure out what you want. Like, do you want to stop being who you are? You can't make a decision and move forward to better yourself if you don't even really know what you want. If you want to get clean and sober and you know that from the bottom of your heart and you have no other desire but to do that, then you will start putting the right foot in front of the other to make whatever decisions you have to make. You can't, I'm going to say this because it's only what I've seen. You can't do it for your kids. You can't do it for your mom. You can't do it for school. You can't do it for your family. You can't do it for your wife. You can't do it for your boyfriend, your girlfriend. It won't work, because if you do it for somebody else, it's going to give you a reason to think that, you can handle it all of a sudden, or you can do it. And that's I think is the biggest lie that people tell themselves, that, oh, I love my kids so much, I'm going to go do it for them. I love that you love your kids so much, but if you're doing it
Yeah.
for them, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. If you're not doing it for yourself, it's not, more than likely will not work.
Yeah, and I completely agree. Even from a fitness or a nutrition standpoint, with my background, you want to get physically fit, or you want to, live a healthy, active lifestyle. You can't do it for the spouse, the significant other, the grandparent, the neighbor. It doesn't work that way, because you're not
Right.
going to stick to it. It has to
Right.
be you. So, Mr. Bryan, let me ask you, what does one day at a time actually mean to you?
Sometimes it's minute by minute. You
Mm,
know, I I I found that I get a little overwhelmed with looking too far into the future, right? It can create an anxiety.
yeah.
I don't really deal with anxiety, but I understand like the overthinking, that it's just too much.
Yeah.
And thinking about the past is constantly going to keep you in a depressive state.
Hmm.
So for me, it's learning that day by day is just one day at a time is thinking sometimes, well, I have to break this down to minute by minute. Where am I at and how am I feeling right now? Right. So it's learning how to live in the present instead of, which is a gift, right? Another word for a present is the gift. It's a
Yeah.
gift to be here right now. It's a gift to be breathing. It's a gift to have the little things in life that you do have. Maybe you don't have a roof over your head. Maybe you don't have clothes on your back, food in your stomach, shoes on your feet, but getting those five basic essentials is the beginning of any kind of successful beginning. And so for me, day by day, taking it one day at a time is so true.
Yeah.
But I've also learned for me the best thing to do is recognize what it is I may be feeling anxious, sad, lonely, scared. Well, I don't really get scared, but I understand it.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just simply being and just knowing that it's okay. It's okay to be messy. It's okay to not understand it. It's okay to have rapid racing thoughts. It's okay to be curious. It's okay to be upset, hurt, feel betrayed from things that have happened in the past. That's normal. And
Yeah.
it's okay. It's okay to be a wreck. Nobody says you have to be perfect. Nobody says you have to figure it all out. You just have to start one place. And that could be today. Don't worry about tomorrow yet.
Oh, I love that. Because sometimes we make transformation sound like this massive event, but rebuilding a life usually isn't one giant leap. It's a series of very small decisions. One day, one choice, one conversation, one boundary, one meal, one night sober, one application, one phone call, one morning where you get to get up even though you don't feel like it. And eventually, those tiny decisions become a completely different life. So, you've seen yourself at your lowest points. You've also experienced what it's like to rebuild. So, when you look at a person at that you are today compared to the person that you were then, what are you most proud of? And if your story could leave the listener with one message today, what would you want them to remember when this episode ends? So, going back to my first question, what are you most proud of?
That I finally love myself,
Wow.
which leads to being proud of myself,
Yeah.
which led me to believe that I can do anything that I really want to do. And there's nothing that can hold me back because of that determination to change. I've been through smear campaigns on TikTok. I've had people send me the worst mean messages. I've had people try to tear me down. Um, in all of that, I've learned how to love myself and not worry about what anybody else thinks about me. This is my life. It's my journey. And no one's going to take my peace and my joy and my gratitude away from me. It just but learning how to do that and be grateful for just that alone is my biggest accomplishment, I think, for myself. Yeah.
Oh, I
Learning
love
how
that.
to
I
look
love
in the
that.
mirror while brushing my teeth again and saying, I'm really proud of you,
Yeah.
you know,
Wow. What would you want them to remember when the episode ends?
that you're worth having the best life on while you have time. You're worthy of having every single desire that you've ever wanted. You remember when you were a kid, at some point you used to fantasize about things, right?
Yep.
And you didn't care what anybody else was thinking about you while you were doing it. Maybe you
Yes.
were in a princess dress and running around and singing and dancing and not giving a rat's ass what anybody else thought.
Yeah.
That's how I live my life today, right? And you're worthy of living that life today because what you put on the inside is what your outside will reflect back to you.
Yeah.
So as long as you're putting that one step forward and adjusting your sale just 1% each day, like if you adjusted your sale 1% for 365 days, you're not going to be right back to where you started. You're going to be so far ahead of what you ever thought was possible that you'll look back at it and go, man, I love this analogy. It's compound interest, life
Yes.
choices. They add up over time, and you would be surprised at what you're really capable of doing if you really want it bad enough.
Oh, I love that, Mr. Bryan. I want to thank you for being willing to tell that story, because there are people listening right now who may be in a completely different situation than you were, but they're carrying the same belief. So, and that belief of I'm too far gone. And I want to challenge that because your circumstances can explain where you are. They don't have to determine where you go next. And I think that's something that you really just kind of harped about in these last few minutes of being together. Your past can be part of your story without becoming the title of your story. And you reference that. So, and that's the difference between being stuck in your identity and rebuilding it. And I think you just shared so beautifully how you went from your situation of homelessness, the tent, the car, nothing, to rebuilding and your business and your coaching and everything that you've put that one foot forward in front of the other using your story. So um they're practical tools that I want you to join me in this as I share with the listeners all over the world. And the first tool I want to share is the to change the sentence, which you kind of hinted at there in a little bit, Mr. Bryan. So the first tool is incredibly simple. Pay attention to the words you use when you describe yourself. Don't say I'm a failure. Say I failed at something. Don't say I'm broken, say I'm going through something difficult. Don't say I'm an addict and that's who I am, but say I'm someone fighting addiction and working toward recovery, which I think you summarized beautifully in this episode. The difference is simple. One makes the problem your identity, the other makes the problem something you're working through. Tonight, catch one sentence you repeatedly say about yourself and rewrite it. The second tool is to win the next 10 minutes. Here's how I want that to kind of look. Stop trying to fix your entire life today. Ask, what is the next thing I can do? Not tomorrow, not next month, not 5 years from now, right now. Drink the water, take the shower, make the phone call, walk outside, apply for the job, delete the number, ask for help, go to the meeting, put the bottle down, get some sleep. Whatever your next right thing is, do that. You don't have to solve your whole life today. You just have to stop making the next decision worse. And I think you've summarized that beautifully, Mr. Bryan. And then the third tool, build evidence. This one might be the most powerful. Every night, write down three things you did right. They don't have to be impressive. Maybe you just got out of bed. Maybe you just didn't use. Maybe you exercised. Maybe you apologized. Maybe you made the phone call. Maybe you went to work. Maybe you asked for help. Why? Because when you spend a long time telling yourself you're a failure, your brain becomes really good at collecting evidence that supports that belief. And Mr. Bryan, you said that.
Absolutely.
Every day you're going to say, here's proof that I'm changing. Because confidence doesn't magically appear. Confidence is built by keeping promises to yourself. If you're listening to this right now and you're in a dark season, I want you to hear me. You are not your worst decision. You are not your worst day. You are not the name somebody called you. You are not your addiction. Mr. Bryan will tell you. You are not your bank account. You are not your past. You are not disqualified from having a future because your past got messy. Maybe you don't need to change your entire life today. Maybe you just need to change the next decision and then the next one and then the next one. That's how rebuilding happens. Not all at once, one decision at a time. Mr. Bryan's story reminds us that sometimes The comeback doesn't begin when everything gets better. I hope you were listening. It gets better and it begins when you decide you're worth fighting for while everything is still hard. That's what I got. And if that's you, start there. One decision, one day, one step. Keep going because your current chapter may be painful, but it is not the end of your story. If this conversation impacted you, don't just listen and scroll away. Do something with it. Send this episode to someone who needs to hear that they're not too far gone. And if you're someone who's rebuilding your life right now, come join us inside the Warriors Haven podcast because you don't have to build alone. This is the Warriors Haven. We don't fake motivation, we rebuild. Mr. Bryan, I am so grateful and I am so thankful that you gave me your time, your energy to build this episode with me, share your story, be vulnerable with the entire world. And is there a way that the listeners can reach out to you, a social media, a website that you'd gladly like to share?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure. I really enjoyed this. I do want to comment on something really quick. I challenge people to, if you maybe you don't believe in a higher power, maybe you don't have any faith in anything at all, that's okay too. This still works. Before you go to sleep tonight, while you close your eyes, repeat this. Show me how great it can be.
Mm,
Just let it go.
yeah,
Just show me how good it can get. See what happens.
I
You
love
can
that.
reach me at crabcrewlife.com. My TikTok is and all my social media is down there. My link tree with all my ways to get a hold of me and everything is down there at the very bottom. And you can read more about Crab Crew and what I'm doing outside of TikTok and share my story.
Oh, I love it. Give us the website one more time.
crabcrewlife.com.
crabcrewlife.com. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the show notes as well so that people can click on the link and be able to get in contact with you. Mr. Bryan, you have a very powerful story. Please keep sharing it on every single platform that you're able to get on because you will impact someone's life somewhere along the way. And I am so, so grateful for you. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Hi, friend. Thanks for tuning into the Warriors Haven podcast, where we turn discipline into freedom and help you build the body, mindset, and lifestyle you deserve. If today's episode fired you up or gave you just that little push you needed, don't stop here. Head on over to thewarriorshaven.com where you'll find details on how to jumpstart the next version of you. Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about showing up for yourself every single day. So until next time, stay strong, stay focused, and stay ready. I'm Jaisha Sutherland, and you're listening to the Warriors Haven podcast.